Alright, we're back. What's up, fellas? And gals, if there's any gals building quads. So we got our camera all set up and configured and ready to go, right? Our camera lead. So we're going to get back to the quad itself here. We got everything dummied up in here. I know where I want to put everything. I'm going to use this XM Plus receiver and put it right there in the top. And I had said I didn't know if I was going to go with my modified VTX Unify Pro or the standard one, because I wanted to use, this is a PW XT60 that goes kind of, oops, sorry, that kind of goes with the PDB that's in here. But as you can see, I want to use the regular TBS Unify so that I can switch antennas. Like I like using these little Emax pagodas. They work really good and they're very tough and bendable. I've crashed with these quite a few times, and I want to be able to switch antennas. Like if I'm in a parking garage and I don't, this works a lot better with like 25 milliwatts in a parking garage, so you don't get multipathing. The video is a lot cleaner. The other part is all the local races around here use TBS. So I have to be able to switch antennas. They have to have a TBS antenna, because sometimes they give you the left-hand antenna also with their ground station. So I have to be able to switch out antennas if I race this thing. So I'll save my modified VTX for something else down the road. So that decision's been made, and I can't like I said, I can't use the this little guy because it's right in the way of where the antenna will be. So I'm going to use a regular battery lead and solder it in there, of course shorten it up and straddle that. Oops, out of camera again. I'm going to solder it in there and straddle the antenna lead in there, the pigtail. So that being said, I like the way this little Astro X canopy, you can just leave it loose and it's together and take it on and off. Very cool. And there's the VTX that we're going to mount up, and I have everything dummied on here. So the next thing I want to do is set up this XM Plus, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Now this camera lead is obviously way too long for what we need. The camera's only going to go from here to there. Let's scoot this stuff over here. The camera's only going to go from here to there to the front. So I only need a camera lead. I like to leave it a little bit longer just in case I want to put this on another build, and then I'll just twist the wires up and tuck them inside like so. So that being said, the camera only goes here on this one. And if I want to move it to something else, I don't think I'll ever use anything bigger or longer than that. If I crash this frame and move the electronics to another frame. So that leaves us these three leads here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off. And there's our camera lead that we're going to have. And then I'm going to use these three silicone leads for the XM Plus. I don't use the little plugs on anything. I direct solder everything. So now there's my positive, negative, and signal for the XM Plus. Now, I'll show you something with this XM Plus. A couple guys have said they don't get the range out of it. And of course they don't. And I'll show you why. These leads on the end of the XM Plus, I think, are 1/6 wavelength. And what we use in our 2.4 gig, what our Tyrannus accepts in FR Sky, is 1/4 wavelength, which is like 31 millimeters, right around there. I think it comes out to 31.3 millimeters. So if you can see here, the XM Plus lead, it's probably really hard to see, See that? The XM Plus lead is shorter than an actual quarter wavelength. So I have two options here. I can take the original one and measure out 30 millimeters-ish, 31 millimeters-ish, and skin the stuff off of it. Or I have some of these for in case I chop battery antennas up in the propellers in a crash. You know, I bought a pack of these a while ago and still have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this out for two reasons. I want the quarter wavelength, and I also want the little bit longer antenna on here because of the way that I'm going to mount it in the frame, and I'll show you that later. But the gist of it is I'm going to mount it up here and run the antenna down here, and then I run them off of here, off the arms with zippy ties and a piece of a little piece of printer tubing, and I'll show you how I do all that. And since I've been doing it this way, I have rarely ever chopped an antenna in a crash, and I'll show you how I mount all that up when we get to it. But right now, we're going to set up this this XM Plus. Let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit. You guys have to bear with me because, like I said, all I have is my my phone hanging on a clamp. So obviously we're going to take these guys off. Which ain't no big deal. Just pull them right off of there, and that's that. I'll save these for later. Like I said, I can always cut this if need be to make a full quarter wavelength. But this is what we want. We want the full quarter wavelength, and this way you won't have any telemetry problems. No fail-safes happening. And then we pop these little guys on. On the camera. It's not too hard to do. Sorry guys, I got to get under my magnifying glass here to make sure they're mated up correctly. Give me just a sec. See, they pop right on there. My big fat hand's in the way. Ugh. Well, normally they pop right on there, but when I'm trying to do it on camera, they don't. Of course. Shazam, baby. So there we go. They pop right on there, no big deal. And then I'm going to pop some, after we put the wires on here, I'm going to pop some hot glue on the little spot there and on where we solder the wires on, and then we'll put some heat shrink over the top of it to keep everything all nice and okie dokie. Alright, so that being said, let's take a little peek at our flight controller here. Our S bus on this guy is these pins down here. These three outside pins. 1, 2, 3. That's our S bus connection. And this little guy is going to go on the canopy just above it. Right there. So, do I want to run the wires out of the front or the back? So let's put the canopy back on here and check that out real quick. I want the antennas to come out of the front, and there's a nice little hole in the canopy right there. I could probably slide this through. Let's see if it'll fit in that hole. Oh yeah, see that? It goes right through there. So that being said, we can solder our leads on here. And then when we solder it to here, we can just slip it through that hole and pop it underneath the canopy right here, like so. And it'll be all nice and neat and tucked in there, and the antennas will be clear, and so that's cool. because sometimes I run them backwards on here just so I can get a better like seal on there. But I guess I could do it either way because it'll fit through that one too. So anyway, let me think here. This is why we mock everything up, so we don't have to go back and unsolder and resolder and do things later. I know it seems like a little bit of a tedious process, but it is what it is. Now I think I'm going to put them on straight, and right through that hole is going to be perfect. Yep. Alright, so let's set that aside. Take this little guy here. This little square one to the inside is the signal. Then I believe we have ground and positive to the going to the outside. I have the little diagram here so we can double check. Always double check and make sure. And see, we have grounds on the outside. See, I was wrong. That's why I double checked. So we have the S bus at the little square thing. Then we have our 5-volt positive, and then ground on the outside. So I want the bind button and the antennas to the top. So we'll use the yellow signal wire. And the positive. And the ground. Trusty soldering iron here. Now, so that's going to be that. I'm going to wire these guys up. Signal, ground, positive, then put a little glue on there and some heat shrink, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's all finished. I don't think you guys need to watch me solder it in the holes. So let's get on to something a little more important. So now we got all our electronics figured out on here. So let's take this canopy off, set it to the side, and take this guy apart. Now we got it all figured out. Move it out of the way for now. Oops. Because next we're going to get ready to do our ESCs. And I'll show you how I do that. Get those out of the way. I'm going to take this flight controller back apart. So we just have our PDB. And this is the front, like so. I'm gonna take just a couple dummy screws, pardon my big arm, just to hold this in place while we line everything up and solder everything. So I'm just gonna run a steel screw through there with a little sacrifice plastic nut in case it gets melted, like so. I'll stick another one in the other corner. Like so. And then I'll show you how I do the ESCs on these guys here. Alright. So here's our ESC. And I hope this is in focus good enough. The positive is here and the negative is here. Positive and negative. What I like to do, leave the standoffs on there so that I can see how the wires are going to need to go around the standoff. I don't want to straddle the standoff. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to. I don't know, maybe I will. That just seems like a little bit neater than running it in here and around. It's going to center it up a little more. But I like to keep them tucked inside and away from any type of problems. Decisions. But anyway, here's what I like to do. I want my ESC. I'll place my ESC where I want it. And I actually like mine closer to the body than the motor. When a prop bends, it bends like this, right? So if I can keep it out of that zone a little more, it's less likely to get a prop strike. So I move them in towards the body a little more, and once I have it about where I want it, then I'll throw a little clothespin on there to hold her still while I figure everything out. And what I'm going to do here, I guess I will run this around the outside, because I kind of like that. It's going to be nice and neat like that. And all these standoffs are in the same position. So, take our ground wire here, and I always leave a little slack in there. You don't want these wires tight. You want to be able to move around a little bit and no stress on the joints. And then what I'm going to do is press my fingernail into that wire so it makes a nice dent on there, so I can see where to cut it. Do the same thing with the positive. Just leave a little bit of slack like so. Push my fingernail in there so I can see where to cut it, and there we go. So, cut these guys off here. And that's that. That's where I need that to be. And they came out to be the exact same length on there. So what I'll probably do is just go ahead and cut all the rest of these ESCs that same length. But I want to show you what I do with this real quick. Now on this Matek, it doesn't have a separate ground spot for the signal wire itself. It just has the spot for the signal wire. So what I'm going to do is take this and wrap it around this ground like so. So that it has a little slack in it, and this also helps make a ferrule or whatever it's called to keep the magnetic field off the signal. So I got that wrapped around the ground like so, and I'll leave a little bit of extra off the end here. I can always trim this down later. So make sure and leave you don't want to be adding wire. It's much easier to take wire away, which is part of the reason I wrap it on here and give it some relief. And then I'm going to strip a little piece of this ground off of there, like so. Then I take the ground signal, the signal ground, separate these wires right here. I'm going to take the ground signal and match it up kind of to where this ground is. Hopefully you guys can see that. Strip that off of there. Then wrap these together. so that when I solder the ground on to the ground pad on the PDB, when I solder the ground onto the ground pad of the PDB, it'll also be grounded. The signal ground will also be connected. And then I have the little signal wire sticking out here to go to the little signal pad on the PDB. So we'll just tin this up. See that? Now they're soldered together like so. And that signal wire is secured by the ground wrapped around it right there. You see that? Nice neat package. So now we can just strip off a little piece of the positive wire here. And then back to our trusty clothespin so things don't wiggle around on us. Get it lined back up. And then quite obviously, we're going to tin these pads and solder the ground and the positive on here. And what's my time on here? All right, we're already over 20 minutes, and I want to keep these 20 minutes long. But that's how now I'll do all 4 ESCs like that, and I'll solder those on off camera and set up the XM Plus with the quarter wavelength antennas. And I'll show you how all that comes out when it's done. Hopefully this was easy enough for you guys to follow. But there you go. So now this just goes to the Matek PDB, and then we'll run the ribbon cable to the flight controller. Nice and easy, very easy to set up. So I'll solder all this up off camera, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!